rights issue. So please try to respect. If you are talking about human rights issue, there is no foreigner. All of us.
Hello, please use the microphone.
Use the microphone.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
It respects you a little bit.
That's all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, really. Oslo is very important city for in my individual life, but also Oslo is very important for the Human Rights Foundation of Turkey and Turkish Medical Association and all of us. Yes, this is the, we are talking about the human rights issue and the Kurdish issue in Turkey, but it is not limited with the Turkey issue because all those kinds of issues are very close linked to other issues. So this is the summary. Tahir Elçi, maybe some of you at least could have a chance to meet him. He is also now, he was the chairperson of the Diyarbakir Bar Association. He is also one of the founders of the Human Rights Foundation of Turkey. He was killed at the end of November in Diyarbakir, just after his press release, which says that peace, only peace, stop the arms. Only few minutes later, he was killed in Diyarbakir. In October, there was some suicide bombings in Turkey, France, and other countries, also in Turkey, yes. And 100 people were killed. They were dancing, as you know, and behind him, you can see the fire, bombs, only for the demonstration. Demonstration for peace. And this is the new view. Maybe some of you know Cizre is a town. 120,000 people are living there. And there's a curfew for more than 40 days. Today, 44 days. Round the clock curfew. Please imagine, in this room, for example, without electricity, sometimes nowadays, electricity can supplied, but without electricity, without food, without communication. And there are some children in this room. 1 month, 1 year ago, 1 year old. And there were some bombings. There are some bombings outside in the streets. And you know that some of them are directly your relatives, and you should have to leave. You have to live in a small place, more than weeks, etc. This is the summary. As human rights organizations, we have 3 parameters when we are talking about the situation, when we are talking about evaluation of the human rights issues. One of them, legislations, naturally. The other one, practices, daily implementation. And the third one is mentality. Speeches of authority in order to show us the mentality. So for today, unfortunately, as Thomas Hammerberg, High Commissioner for Human Rights of the Council of Europe, prepared a very nice report in 2011 and published it in the beginning of 2012. When you read such a report, you can easily see that today is not a coincidental. It is a result, as remarked in the report of Thomas. There is, unfortunately, there's a big problem in the rule of law, as remarked again in the progress report of the European Commission and the new one also. This is, as Gunnar told something about it. Yes, in Turkey, between 2000 and 2005, there were some positive steps in Turkey. But after 2005, they changed many laws, including Turkish Penal Code, including anti-terror law, including police duty law, etc., etc. And all those changes, unfortunately, were negative. The positive trend changed negatively after 2005, not current years. And yes, after 2013-14, maybe some of you noticed there were some demonstrations which is called Gezi events, for example, in Turkey, and there were some other issues in 2013. Yes, the democratic life, unfortunately, it got narrowed year by year, and finally, last year, July 2015, armed conflict restarted, unfortunately. And the main approach in Turkey, you can know such a word, huh? Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists. In one time, Bush said something like that. Today, some authorities in Turkey use the same sentences. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists. This is a real situation in Turkey nowadays. So, as Gunnar told again, democratic life entirely got pressed. Freedom of expression, freedom of thought, freedom of assembly, etc., etc. Maybe you know some of the journalists, huh? One of our main newspapers, they were also arrested, and then many journalists are in prison nowadays, and maybe you know only a few days ago one of the journalists unfortunately was wounded by the security forces in Cizre while he was trying to follow the situation in Cizre. And many academicians, more than 1,000, finally prepared a statement. They tried to say that peace, this is the summary of the statement, peace, say something about it. And then, unfortunately, many administrative investigations, many judicial investigations have been launched against them. Some of them are funders, some of them are members of executive board members, etc., etc. Some of them were detained and then released again. Some of them dismissed from their duties from the universities, from their job, etc. As I told to you, when you looked at, for example, legislations, authorities change laws, but change again and again. For example, they changed law on the internet in the beginning of 2014. They changed, Constitutional Court, for example, rejected some of the articles, and then they change again. It has become a kind of a theater, huh? Play. Finally, for today, for example, those figures are dealing with the websites which are blocked. Please look the figures. Huh? Only in 2010, approximately 10,000 websites were blocked. Nowadays, more than 100,000 websites were blocked. And because of it, European Commission report also referred such a trend. And there are many decisions by the European Court of Human Rights on these issues. They changed the other laws, High Council of Judges, Prosecutors, Anti-Terror Law in the last year, and National Intelligence Service Law. All of them, unfortunately, didn't respect human rights issues. And finally, last year, maybe you heard, they changed police law again, and just after the law, for example, those figures, that's due to firearms injuries by the security forces, of course. Most of the deaths, unfortunately, were after the law, more than 200, for example, because in this package, police can easily use the firearms in all over Turkey. Yes, Ankara, for example, it is unbelievable. Please imagine, 10,000s of people attended the demonstrations, and there were some suicide bombings, and 100 people were killed, unfortunately. in the first seconds, minutes, a little bit, more than 15 minutes, the health professionals who attended the demonstrations try to reach the wounded people. Maybe you noticed, for example, all the health professionals who attended the demonstrators try to reach the wounded people, try to treat them, first aid, etc. In the same seconds, security forces use tear gas, while the health professionals try to give such a first aid to the wounded people. The main reflection of the security forces use tear gas in the same seconds. And then there's a restriction order issued on the investigation. We don't know what's going on, but we know that investigations against the people who protest the bombing, there were many investigations against the protesters. And one of them, for example, just the day after of the bombing in Adana, there were demonstrations against the bombs. And security forces attacked the demonstrators, and one of the child, 3.5 years old, for example, were killed. The only positive thing in the previous years in Turkey was the ceasefire in 2013, 2014, till the July 2015. This is the directly, unfortunately, deaths during the armed conflict related to the Kurdish issue. As you notice, in 2011 and 2012, it was also a tragic period in Turkey, and many people, including the law enforcement, militants, civilians, lost their lives during the armed conflict. But you can easily see that in 2013 and 14, because of the ceasefire, very few people lost their lives. So it was very valuable. It was very valuable. It also shows us that if there is a real willingness, for example, such an armed conflict couldn't be implemented if there is a strong, real political willingness. It shows us at the same time. During the ceasefire period, yes, this is a very valuable. Each individual is very valuable from all sides. But we had also deep concerns, and we tried to share our opinions, because besides the ceasefire, we noticed that there is no real willingness, and such kinds of fundamental human rights and freedoms could be easily used as a negotiation, as a bargaining, something like that. If you start to use such kinds of values as a bargaining, as a kind of a negotiation, at the same time, unfortunately, you started to destroy the values. If you destroy the values, it is not possible to build up a real peace process. So, for example, during the ceasefire, authorities can easily release some people and then detain some people. If they want, they can use all the values, I mean. So it was seen that sincere and complete steps haven't been taken by the government despite the existence of the ceasefire period. For such kinds of things, a holistic program and from divided past to the shared future should be conducted. If you don't have such kinds of holistic program, unfortunately, such kinds of ceasefire couldn't be sustained at the same time. And democratization program itself democratization itself is a value, so such kinds of programs should distance every kind of instrumental approach. And in that time, we, for example, shared our views to the political authorities, all the relevant sides. There is a big risk if we couldn't succeed to conduct such kinds of holistic programs. Unfortunately, we might face a very tragic events. We wrote in that time, we told in that time, and unfortunately, after July, only after July, the most intense times of the armed conflicts during all the 2000s period, many people lost their lives. Approximately 200 law enforcement officers, or more than 400 militaries, or more than 200 civilians lost their lives during this period. Naturally, from the human rights perspective, from the health perspective, I'm also the health professional, it's very clear. War kills human beings, animals, environment, values, everything. So we are against the war and armed conflict, absolutely. If you are talking about the armed conflict, on basis of the previous experiences in your country also, human beings produced many valuable documents, which is called international humanitarian law, human law at the same time. So during the conflicts, you should at least respect something in order to save one life, but at the same time in order to save the values. Otherwise, yes, one time in the future, one day, such an armed conflict will stop. One day, ceasefire, for example, will be declared again. But how we can explain such kinds of pains, or how we can cope after the ceasefire, or cope to all the traumatic processes if we destroyed all the values. Nowadays, curfew, round-the-clock curfew, as I told in my first sentences. Please imagine 44 days. Unbelievable. We, of course, this is not, there is no law which permits such kinds of things in Turkey, but this is a de facto position at the same time. And during the curfew area, in this area, approximately 7 cities, 19 towns, something like that, 1,300,000 people are living there. Naturally, most of them civilians. Yes, there might be some armed militant groups, but we are talking about millions. So, from the health discipline, it is very important. If you give a harm for one person, you should not implement such kinds of processes in the medicine side. So this is very, nowadays, big tragedy, hundreds of thousands of people, fundamental needs, emergency services, even if there are, in the current weeks and the current days, even if there are some European Court of Human Rights decisions, interim measures, maybe you know interim measures is a specific decisions of them. So such practices cannot be justified with trenches, barricades, public security, etc., etc. Yes, those are other issues. There are some barricades, there are some trenches, etc. But all of things cannot be justified such practices. Because of it, Council of Europe Commissioner for Human Rights prepared many statements. 5 minutes. So, Aziz, I have to share with you. We opened a small center in Cizre in the last October. Because of it, we have a very large network. And one of our volunteer health professional, male nurse, also was shot just at the end of December. So I have to remind him, this is our center, beyond. This is our center in Cizre. We open it with Aziz and the others. But unfortunately, Aziz now was shot, killed. Now, what we can do without Aziz? Is this a life? Life is continuing, yes, but without Aziz, or without Tay, or without those people. I have only 5 minutes, so in this year, dealing with the Kurdish issue in 2015, you can see that there were many detentions, but it is not limited with the Kurdish issue. Please take into please look this. This is the number of prisoners in Turkey. Ministry of Justice data. In 2005, there were 55,000 people in the prison. It increased to 176. Özcan, there is no such a trend in Turkey in all our history. What's the meaning of it? Of course, those are not limited with the political, a kind of political prisoners, all the prisoners, but it shows us something. Where we are going, Their strategy in 2017 to increase the capacity of the prison to 145,000. Please imagine such a dream. Someone's dream something like that, to increase the capacity of the prisoners, something like that. I don't want to force my time, so yes, in Turkey, you see, in Norway also it's very important refugee issue. In Turkey, more than 2.5 million Syrians. You are also dealing with this issue in Norway. Our figures is something like that. So we have reached a fork in the road. In Turkey, but I have to say that in all over the world also. It is not possible to continue such a life in all over the world. And priority, of course, ceasefire should be today. To succeed, to stop the arms today, not tomorrow. We are so late. Aziz and the others were left. We are so late. We are so sorry. This is the priority, of course, and democratization, reconciliation, civilians on base of values, etc. So such an international, we are not a foreigners, each other. My final words. So thank you very much.
Metin, you should stay here actually, because even if I'm strict with the time, I